Hello, this is Parker Brisebois, Parker Thomas Brisebois, first of his name, and you are watching The Iridescent. Today's art installation is a hand and or machine woven on-the-go blanket. Could also be used as a towel, indoor, outdoor. It's warm, it's a little coarse, and best of all, it was free. And Charger colors. Chargers are my team. It's vaguely Charger colored, but I count it. I don't have much Charger paraphernalia, so I'm going to put that in the grab bag bin as my display, my material displays of fealty to that long forsaken football club. Yeah. Anyways, I'm not really excited to watch the NFL this year because I just got a bunch of ethical questions about how they're going to possibly responsibly social distance, but they're doing training camp and stuff. They're practicing. Earl Thomas of the Baltimore Ravens just punched a teammate and got kicked off the team. So that's how you know football is just as fresh and physical and full of frustration as ever. But anyways, I don't know. I'm debating whether or not I can support that at all. But what's going to make that decision real easy for me is the fact that, as I've said before, I don't have cable. And yet, my roommate and I made the decision, the deliberation. We had this council, we all sat around in a dark room with hoods on, candles, there's like evil chanting in the background. Is very, very Illuminati-esque. And we made the decision to throw down $50 or something for the next month so that we could get Hulu Live Sports. So now I get to watch the bubble. Yes. NBA playoffs. I've been watching that for the last couple days, and man, has that been a fresh of breath air to be able to watch a little live sports. And got my mind back on the bubble, which has just been this incredible feat, both as a medical, scientific experiment, but also as a media experiment, as a social experiment, and what we're capable as a species, society, when we have an organization dead set on doing something, we have the resources to pull it off. Because again, they have 0 cases of community spread from the bubble, which is crazy considering how infectious this whole thing is. But I won't bore you too much with coronavirus topics today, once I get away from this anyway. But I was doing some research just on the NBA at large, and it reminded me, I found a story and I reread a story about Daryl Morey's tweets last year. Daryl Morey's the owner or GM or something, probably both, of the Houston Rockets, which is a team that has traditionally had a huge following base, a huge followership in China overseas, because Chinese people love basketball. Everybody loves basketball. Basketball is great. They had Yao Ming play on the Rockets, so there's sort of a spiritual connection there. Rockets have an alternate jersey with Chinese print on it, which is pretty cool. So they've got a connection to the fan base overseas there. But Daryl Morey explicitly came out in support of the pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong last year. And naturally, this caused a huge uproar in mainland China. And Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, estimated that those tweets alone caused the NBA to lose hundreds of millions of dollars in ad revenue as a bunch of sponsors pulled out, Chinese sponsors pulled out, which just boggles the mind just to think about the influence people have via the internet, just in terms of the consequences of a powerful person expressing their opinion, their support for something, deriding something, giving their opinion on anything, and the financial implications of that. Hundreds of millions of dollars, like, I'm going to be lucky if I'm ever worth $1 million, and that's hundreds of aspirational forms of me in a financial sense that are just gone because he made a tweet supporting a cause. It was a cause worth supporting. It's just wild to think about how money moves in relation to moralistic statements, And you wonder why it's so hard for people in authority positions to just come out and make statements aligned with common sense decency, and just, stay in moral standing with the positions they publicly hold. It's because money doesn't let them do that. Also talking about financial incentives, a big part of the reason why the NBA ended up going through with the bubble, which is a massive endeavor. It took a ton of thought, ton of energy, ton of money, lots of investment and buy-in, both literally and metaphorically, from the players and the administration of the NBA to get the thing going. And part of the reason that they were dead set on doing that, because they could have easily just said, the rest of the season's canceled. Whoever had the best record gets to be the champions this year. They could have just as easily done that. And for a while there, it looked like that might be what they were going to have to do. But what was keeping a restart, i.e. what became the bubble, on the back burner and likely to happen, was that they were estimating $1 billion in loss for the league without the postseason. Now, that's a lot of money, and we've talked about how other sports, owners in particular, should be able to buck up and just take the hit, operate in the red for a year, considering how much wealth they already have. But the NBA has one of the most equitable revenue structures in terms of who's being compensated based on how much work and how much indispensable value they bring to the league. Because the way that the revenue structure works in the NBA is 50% of the revenue goes to the players through contracts and benefits and things of that nature. So not only were the owners of the teams, the people striking media deals and such, standing to lose a lot of money, the players were in it as well. So that's what kind of allowed them to all work together, get on the same page, and just make the move going forward and make the bubble happen. The bubble's weird. Watching it is just a totally different experience. I don't know, there's reports of players talking about it as surreal and kind of creepy and just not the same. But it is basketball and sports pandemic. But man, our sports so feel good. It feels so good just to be able to watch them and know they're going on. It almost makes you forget about the rest of all the stuff in the world, and maybe that's the point. In fact, that definitely is the point. Fun fact: three-point shooting percentage has gone up in the bubble because the leading theory is it's like a basketball gym, or of course it's a basketball gym. It's like a high school basketball gym the way they have it set up. They're not playing in a dome anymore with stands going up behind the net. So apparently it has something to do with a shooter's depth perception to just look at a flat surface, a 90-degree angle between a wall and the floor behind the basket they're shooting at, as opposed to this, 45-ish degree slope going up behind them forever and having all your ugly mugs back there behind them. So I don't understand the science, but that's pretty cool. So yeah, enough about sports. Steve Bannon was arrested for defrauding a bunch of fucking racist idiots who thought giving him money to build a wall for their asshole mascot Trump was a good idea. Oh God, I don't even remember how much money he ended up raising, but it was a lot. It was millions of dollars, or close to $1 million, and he was just using it all for his personal gain. Him and Peter Kolfage or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce that name, or even if I got the first name right, but he's some triple amputee war veteran who was a real easy mascot, and the guy who actually started the GoFundMe page, because it was a fucking GoFundMe page. It wasn't a legit charity or nothing. It was just an internet fundraiser for racists who thought that that's how government infrastructure projects get done. Is you just dump money to some rage site that was probably advertised on Breitbart or the Daily Stormer or some horrible site like that. And you throw a couple fives, Cletus throws a couple fives, all your other inbred asshole Trump supporting friends and relatives throw in a couple bucks here and there, and suddenly a wall gets built. No, that's not how that works. What happens is Stephen Bannon gets to go play on a fucking yacht, which is where he got arrested, wonderfully ironically by officers working for the United States Postal Service. So that's just so poetic and wonderful, and just a glimmer of light in a dark, dark time. Yeah, so God, Steve Bannon is just sludge. He is a slug man. He was a angsty teenage kid who probably got picked on a lot, caused him to start murdering rodents. Don't be sympathetic for this guy because he's an evil prick. And then some radioactive slug bit him and infected him with this just wretched zero-sum game of the world where every non-Eurocentric white cutthroat capitalist perspective was just inferior and therefore had to be disenfranchised and stamped out wherever it could be found. That's Steve Bannon. He's like not Spider-Man, he's Slugman. He's invertebrate, horrible prick. One of my favorite Steve Bannon stories, for those of you who don't know who he is, he's the founder of Breitbart. He was Trump's main political strategist. He has been an investment banker. He was in the Navy. He had a Hollywood production company for a long time. He's just a dude who long ago got his tentacles into the mechanisms that make American capital and messaging go for a long time. And long ago, he picked his lane, that he was just this pro far right-wing populist, just chauvinistic, bigot, anti-Semitic, just literally check all the boxes for a guy who hates things. But what's terrifying about him, why he's got supervillain vibes, why you give him the moniker of Slugman like he's some Marvel villain, is that he's knows exactly what, I'm not even going to say he's a genius. He just knows the ins and outs of dealing with his base, so to speak. The consumers of Breitbart, the consumers of far right-wing evangelical, often propaganda. He knows how to get them frothed up, and he knows how to capitalize off that. Look at the Trump campaign. Perfect example of that. And what he got defrauded for was just people who really cared about the wall, like the physical element of the metaphor being built, to give him money directly because they were too ignorant to understand that that's not how a project like a massive international border wall would even work. But he knows they're too stupid to know that. And he knows that they'll give him money. And he knows that they're not going to follow up with that because his media sites are probably reporting that the wall's going up, or that it already is up, or something to that effect. And what's he going to do with all that shit? He's just going to cash out. Little context of a lesser known endeavor, because all of this stuff I'm talking about is widely documented. You could look this up about Steve Bannon. It's not hidden unless you're going on to Breitbart, which again is his news station, or one he helped found anyway. But one of the lesser known anecdotes of Steve Bannon's weird winding career is at one point when he was working for Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs was employing this man. Capital corrupts and they don't give a shit as long as you're effective. But anyways, he took something like 60 million or 600 million to start this entertainment company in Hong Kong called Internet Gaming Entertainment. Real creative, right? Well, anyways, it was a production company that didn't produce anything. They didn't make a single media production. There was no TV show, there's no movie, not internet news, nothing like that. What they did was they employed a shitload of low-cost laborers in Hong Kong. I'm pretty sure it was Hong Kong. If it wasn't Hong Kong, then I'm a bigot, but it was somewhere in East Asia. And he employed these guys to play World of Warcraft. And what they did was if you're familiar with how the game works, is they just played the game in a methodical, mechanical fashion. So they were farming in-game currency, gold, and they were farming it in just massive amounts because this is what they did all day. This was their job. And it's in a place where there's not a lot of protection for livable wages. So he's paying, typical story of labor globalization. He's just paying them dirt to play WoW all day and collect and harvest a massive amount of in-game currency, and that currency would be used to buy items in the game, weapons and again, World of Warcraft weapons. Okay, so like sulfurous hand of Ragnaros. That's soulbound, so you probably can't trade that one. But anyways, just a lot of good, valuable stuff. And then that company would hoard those items, in-game items, and sell them to Western gamers for real money. And it's a racket. And part of what he discovered there apparently was the infinitely cruel potential of internet trolls. Because, and this was happening in 2005, by the way. So he discovered some of the more toxic elements of the World of Warcraft community. I'm not condemning World of Warcraft. I used to play World of Warcraft as recently as a couple months ago before giving it up for like the 5th time. But like most games, there's pretty toxic, wretched center, or maybe it's off center. I don't know. There are some hardcore WoW players who are bad people, and there are bad people who play all games. But these people are sort of steeped in the two-headed monster of internet anonymity, so people don't know who they are in real life, and because they're not putting their face to their takes like I am, dishonorable little dicks. Just kidding. But the other thing is, games like that, especially because they have a lot of younger players, like teenagers and stuff, teenage males in particular, there's a lot of stock in kind of shock humor, like crude, just say a word that's horrible, say a phrase that makes no sense but just has like maximum attention-grabbing vulgarness, right? And whether that be racial or misogynistic or just potty talk straight up, it's all there, right? And then the third one is just the unfortunate reality of the demographic of some hardcore MMO players. It's the incel thing. And I'm sorry, but some people play too much World of Warcraft, too much Call of Duty, too much anything, too much Madden, to the point where they're not getting laid and not having meaningful relationships in the real world, and it causes them to become disillusioned, disenfranchised, pop some shit called the black pill or something. And if you get those 3 elements, I said 2 at first, but I really meant 3. Anonymous internet identity, immature, bigoted teenage male humor, and then disillusionment with society because of your own reclusiveness, because of your fixation on playing video games, you get a soup ripe for an injection by someone like Steve Bannon, who might say something to you like, yes, Jews control the media, or like, I don't know, liberals told you that if you go to school and work hard, the world will be your oyster, but that's not the case because they're letting all the immigrants in, and communism and blah 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 blah, and they'd rather just play World of Warcraft. But Steve Bannon's worldview has way more space in it for horrible vitriolic insults than a more progressive one does. Moving on, I haven't watched the DNC basically at all because I don't have cable. I know there's other ways to watch it, but for me personally, I'm just not exactly sure what I'm going to get out of it. I'm going to vote Democrat all the way down the ticket, basically, locally, everywhere, because I know it's at stake. And I'm not super stoked about Joe Biden as the guy, but he's not bad, and he's way better than Trump. Like he wouldn't. I didn't vote for him in the primary, but I'm going to be happy. I'm going to click my heels when I bubble in that dot next to Joe and Kamala on the ballot. So point is, I don't need a lot of convincing, so I didn't feel the need to watch the DNC. But I have listened to bits and pieces, and particularly I had a couple people tell me about Biden's speech towards the end. And I've listened to some clips of it, and I've mentioned I'm an English major, so I'm like fascinated with rhetoric, right? Messaging is fascinating to me. It's an art form. And I like to pay really close critical attention to the rhetoric, the message between the lines, and the structure of the message itself in political speeches. And I liked, because Biden's a unity candidate, right? So he's trying to invoke some of the stuff that gets people on the center and even a little bit on the right fired up too. And he talked about the 4 pillars of his campaign, of what his campaign plans to combat. And those were obviously the pandemic, first and foremost. Again, framing response to coronavirus as something we can fight. Interesting thing, but wildly consistent. Like, we want to think of diseases as something we can punch in the face. But I touched on that last episode, and I don't want to go too into it. But so he's combating the pandemic. He's combating unemployment, which is good. Always be talking about the workers. Always be talking about the workers. That's the consistent appeal of socialism and a robust government, or a robust public sector with a thorough social welfare net. We can't let people just fall into poverty because they get boned by something way out of their control and they're out of work for 6 months. You know, we can't let people just lose their lives, lose their hope, lose any ability to engage with the American promise of social mobility. We can't let that happen. So attacking unemployment, love it. The third one was racial injustice, obviously. That one I'm just like, I don't know. Like, that's awesome. Black Lives Matter needs to be on the forefront of all politicians' minds. I guess I'm just saying, I want to know what that looks like coming out of the president's office. And maybe I've just become so cynical after 3.5, almost 4 years of Trump. And just, you know, the persistence of racial injustice throughout the years, throughout the generations, you know. It's not like, I just want to know what it looks like when the Biden administration combats racial injustice, you know. Is it going to be defunding a lot of police? Like, what is it? Is it going to be a half measure? I'm sure it's going to be earnest, but is it going to be effective? So, interested to see that. And then the fourth one is climate change, which climate change is always the fourth one. To me, it's kind of like the most glaring existential threat that we need to be focused on. But I'm glad it's in there. And it's been in there from the start, and I give Joe credit for that. And that's a good thing, because if we're all burning up in a heat death and we can't breathe the air because there's no more trees in the Amazon, then none of these other things we were talking about are even going to fucking matter, because I know damn well that I'm going to be crawling all the rest of you trying to become the next Immortan Joe from Mad Max, and, you know, accumulate all the breeding wenches for myself so that I can have a mini empire in an irradiated desert, again, with like little to no oxygen saturation. So fight climate change so none of us have to pursue that life goal. And then last thing is he talked a lot. He was using the rhetoric of light, which I loved, because it's so simple and elegant to engage with. He was talking about bringing light back into a country that's been consumed by darkness. It's easy to engage with, man. That's like the narrative of Halo. It's the narrative of Lord of the Rings. It's the narrative of all classic epics of struggle versus good and evil. And it's hope It's powerful, but it's soft. It's not aggressive or evil, but light also has this element of truth to it. Being a bearer of light is being someone who casts away the darkness and obfuscation of lies. And in this sort of post-truth moment we're in right now, not only do we need goodness, which is obviously subjective, we need truth, which is fundamentally a lot less subjective. We need to get on the same page with the reality we're dealing with. Because how are we going to deal with something like climate change if we don't all agree it's happening, when we can see it in front of our eyes and can agree with the scientists on just how big a fucking threat it is? Which brings us to the final topic, which is just, as of today, the 23rd of August, California is experiencing its second and third biggest fires of all time at the same time. And that was the result of this crazy dry lightning storm in Northern California. That was the result of a confluence of three irregular pressure systems, one coming off a tropical depression off the west coast of Mexico, one series of thunderstorms in mainland Mexico, and then dry, hot desert winds swirling up from Nevada and Arizona and meeting together happening at the same time. These aren't just, it's not like it was just a little muggy and a little rainy and a little dry. All three of these were extreme versions of the weather patterns I just described. And when they all met up, there was this insane dry lightning storm. It's like really moist in the air. It's not raining, but lightning comes down because of the pressure buildup in the system. I wish somebody, please explain to me how lightning works, first of all. Anybody in the comment, just somebody describe to me exactly how that works. But what I do know about lightning and how it works is that it lights shit on fire. My relatives in San Diego, as far as I can tell, aren't affected, which is good. But I mean, when the whole Earth's climate goes to shit, nobody's going to stay unaffected for long. Here in Washington, we're kind of getting to the short-term benefits of becoming more balmy for longer parts of the year, less rain. But it's all going to go to shit eventually. And probably in ways that we wouldn't anticipate. I'm not saying the world is ending. I'm just saying that the challenges are going to get more harrowing and demand more and more resources, especially if we're not proactive about them. So don't call me a nihilist or a defeatist or a pessimist even. But I'm constantly now hearing about things like, remember the polar vortex? Just weather patterns that I'd never even heard of. Not a rainstorm, not a tornado, not a hurricane, not a wildfire, not an earthquake. It's a polar vortex. Okay. Did they just make that up? No, it's a well-documented thing. It's just extremely rare. But now these things are happening more and more. Like the derecho, which just happened in Iowa about a week ago. It's a straight-line windstorm that left like half of Iowa without power for like a week. Some of them still don't have it. And then a bunch, ton of building damage and flooding and all this shit. And this is just happening everywhere. So if you need any more, reason to vote for Democrats all the way up and down, just look up climate change stuff, dude. Just, that scares the shit out of me, and it makes me want to get a vasectomy and never have kids, because why would I want to bring kids into a world that we are actively just burning down and suffocating in, So don't let me get a vasectomy. Vote Democrat, do what you can, do your research, do what you can to combat climate change. And I'm not even sure what that is, but maybe just ride your fucking bike more often, So, anyways, thanks for listening. I had a lot of fun this episode. Thanks for listening to me ramble. Please leave comments, subscribe. I have 39 subscribers as of this moment. I'm looking at that number right now. And that's fine. We're starting small. We're a grassroots movement here at the Iridescent. We're going to continue to grow. But I challenge you, yes, you, to be the one who gets me to 40 subscribers. So do that. Tell all your friends, man. I know we're making good shit here. And we'll be back with another video, another interview coming soon. Thanks for joining me, Parker Brisebois. You've been watching the Iridescent. Peace!